And I will call the August 11th, 2021 City of Fort Lauderdale Board of Adjustment meeting to order. Mr. Maxey, problem? Your name's up there. Yeah, your name's been changed by executive order. I thought you knew that. Lisa, can you please take a roll call to see if we have a quorum?
Yes. Chair Nelson?
Yes.
Vice Chair McTeague? Yes. Ms. Ellis? Yes. Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Mr. Elfman?
Yes.
Blaise McGinley?
Here.
Where? Oh, okay. Douglas Reynolds?
I'm giving you a hearing aid.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Maxey, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Good job, as always. You should each have in your packets a copy of the minutes from our July 2021 board meeting. Anybody have any changes or comments? If not, we'll wait eagerly for a motion.
Second.
Got a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Any changes, deletions, additions, alignments, corrections, rephrasings, soliloquisms? No? In that case, let's call the vote, please. Sure. Yeah, we can do it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Please show unanimous approval. Each member of the public that wishes to speak after each item is presented and discussed by the board will have 3 minutes per item. Representatives of associations and groups will have 5 minutes. Lisa, can you please swear in anybody who will be speaking tonight? Thank you very much. I'm going to call our first agenda item, which is case number BOA 2107-0004, SNG 1115 Investments, Inc. Ms. Toothaker, are you here? You are at the podium. Great. I didn't have my glasses on, but let's do disclosures first. Mr. Elfman, can we start with you?
Sure, I spoke to council and had a site visit.
Very good.
None.
None?
Blaise McGinley spoke with council and site visit.
Howard Nelson spoke with council.
Patrick McTeague spoke to council, site visit.
Chad Maxey spoke with council.
Very good. Thank you. And Ms. Toothaker, before you start, I just want to know if there are any members of the audience who intend to speak on this item. Seeing none, we'll ask again at the end of Ms. Toothaker's presentation. But Ms. Toothaker, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to be here for my first in-person public meeting. So I'm thrilled to see you all in person.
We're all kind of still really excited about in-person meetings.
I'm really excited myself. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening on behalf of variance application for property located at 1115-1123 Northeast 9th Avenue. I know many of you did a site visit. I know you're very familiar with the property. It's just east of the railroad tracks in a heavily industrial area, a little bit east of the CEMEX cement plant as well. With me this evening is Josh Gelfman, who is with KBD. He is the development manager for KBD, and KBD is a development arm that develops ghost kitchens. So the item that's before you is a ghost kitchen. So I'm just going to take you through the PowerPoint. Just showing you some images of again, I know a lot of you drove it. It's, like I said, this is it's heavily industrial. It's almost entirely industrial, with the exception of 2 apartment complexes that are across from us. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. The property is zoned B3, and it's land use commercial, so it is an appropriate land use and zoning for the use that we're requesting. We are showing you a survey that's existing conditions, and really what's before you tonight is 2 issues. It looks like a lot because there's a lot of different sections of the various sections of the code, but it really boils down to back out parking, and landscaping. And so what we're showing you here is that the site has existing back out parking, and it's been that way for a very long time. And I'll talk to you about specific dates and history in just a minute. So just some pictures of existing conditions. Again, you know, we're not the only people that are backing out into the right of way. The entire street is, including on both sides of the street. The industrial warehouses that are all along the same side of the street as us, and the industrial warehouses that are on the other side, and the apartments also back out into the street. So it's a condition that you see all throughout this area because it's one of the original areas that was developed in Fort Lauderdale, and these areas preceded the adoption of the code that discussed back out parking. So I thought it'd be important to show you just some historical aerials. We can show you that the back out parking has existed at least since 1995, since we could go back in time. So we've got images from 95, 2003, 2010, and 2021, where the conditions have all been exactly as they are today. So we are in DRC with a site plan for the ghost kitchen, and it's the change of use request that kind of kicked us into needing to come to the Board of Adjustment for the ghost kitchen. We are asking for a parking reduction, but I'm going to talk about that in a little bit too. The food that is produced here is produced in the facility, is not available for on-site pickup or consumption by the public or individual consumers. It's produced on-site. It's either delivered by third-party delivery drivers or by the individual licensee that can deliver food from multiple different kitchens. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the existing back-out parking to meet the standards of the ULDR. So Section 472011, which that allows us to restripe, to keep the back-out parking, but restripe and add an additional 2 parking spaces to get back to 10. It used to have 10. They took 2 away, and we're asking to put 2 back. While the back-out parking condition is existing, While the back-out parking condition is existing, the change of use also triggered requirements as it relates to VUA landscaping, which we are also seeking variances. So this is a list of the variances, and as you can see, they really all relate to 2 sections in the code, but we went through, pretty carefully went through them. So the first is back-out parking. We're requesting a variance to allow back-out parking not entirely on site and to omit the commercial use requirement of 1 peninsular landscape area for every 4 spaces. Again, requesting a variance to allow 2 additional back-out parking spaces where the code does not allow additional back-out parking. Number 3, requesting a variance to allow back-out parking where there's a residential use existing across the right-of-way, which they also have back-out parking. Number 4, requesting a variance to not provide the landscape islands and perimeter landscape areas where the code requires that landscape islands meet the requirements of 4721.12.4C and D. Where we have to provide that every 6 spaces. It really doesn't even make sense when there's only 10 spaces total. Number 5, landscaping requirements for VUA, requesting a variance to not provide perimeter landscape where the code requires perimeter landscape areas along the perimeter of a parcel of land which does not abut a street, the minimum depth of the landscape area to be 2.5 feet. There's not even room on this site to accommodate that. That would not be possible to do. Landscape requirements for VUA, again, requesting a variance to not provide landscape islands where the code requires islands to be a minimum of 3/4 of the length of the adjacent parking space by a minimum of 8 feet in width. Again, because it's an existing condition, there's just not room on the site to do these anyway. Number 7, requesting a variance to not provide landscape islands where the code requires landscape areas to be planted with at least 1 tree. It really is all the same variance, but because it's broken out into subsections, we thought it was important to go through them. And finally, retroactive VUA landscaping, requesting a variance to not provide retroactive VUA landscaping where the code states that a vehicular area which existed prior to 1977 must meet at least 50% of the requirements today. So we are a legally non-conforming use for back-out parking. The original site plan was approved in April of 1960. And in the next slide, I'm just blowing that up to show you that this situation that we have today existed at that time. It was only later that the code was amended that prohibited back-out parking and then also required some of the VUA requirements as it relates to landscaping. So the back-out parking has existed for decades, and it has not created a traffic hazard. It is a condition that exists on the street today. We have prepared a traffic statement as part of the DRC review process. We are well below what triggers the need for a traffic study. It's less than 1,000 trips, and it's actually about 20% of what would be required to even require a full traffic study. So we don't even get close to that requirement. We are proposing to stripe the right-of-way to provide delineation and create a safer driving environment for the property and the surrounding properties as part of the application. And we are asking, proposing 10 parking spaces, but we are in discussions with multiple other of our neighbors to provide off-site parking. That's part of our application to the Planning and Zoning Board. That's not something that comes to the Board of Adjustment, but that is something that we are currently working on, and we've got one handshake deal that is just being papered right now for additional parking, and that would be for our employees, not for the drivers coming in. Employees would park off-site. So we do meet the variance criteria. It requires that prior to the approval of a variance, the Board of Adjustment must find that the following criteria is met: that special conditions and circumstances affect the property at issue, which prevent the reasonable use of such property. As I said, the property is in a heavy commercial industrial district. It's been zoned B3 since at least the 50s. The existing building and back out parking on the property were developed far before the effective date in 1997 of the city's ULDR that requires us to even ask for this variance. The existing building footprint comprises about 82% of the lot coverage, and the requirements for the retroactive VUA landscaping, islands and perimeter landscaping and sidewalk would result in a loss of all of the parking, essentially. So it is certainly not self-imposed. Sorry, I keep jumping around. Number two, that the circumstances which cause the special conditions are peculiar to the property at issue or to such a small number of properties that they clearly constitute a marked exception. And as I said, this is consistent with the existing condition on this street and all of the streets around it. It's heavy commercial district. It's been used as an industrial area. This is a use that's considered appropriate and is appropriate for the industrial use. Literal application of the provisions of the ULDR would deprive the applicant of substantial property right. In this instance, literal application of the ULDR would in fact decrease the amount of parking spaces to, I believe it's 2, because then you would have to park, and this would stand out as the only property that has parallel parking, whereas everybody else has back out parking. The hardship is not self-created. This obviously preceded the code. And finally, that it is the minimum variance that will make possible reasonable use of the property. We believe that applies to us as well. Again, it's an existing condition with existing back-out parking. It was properly approved in the 60s, and it was only after that the code changed. So we believe that this application fits squarely into all of that criteria. Last but not least, I did mention that we have a number of letters of support, most notably from the Apex residents, which is the apartment complex that's across the street from us. They were very pleased to write a letter of support for us, and also one of our adjacent neighbors. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
And I'm assuming you want to reserve some time for rebuttal if you
I would. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions from the board? I've got a couple, but I'll wait. Please.
This may be a little too complicated for, I don't see Malik. But sorry, yeah. I heard the comment a couple times that this wasn't self-imposed, but the question is could this building be utilized as warehouse without requiring all these variances and whatnot?
Good, and that kind of gets to my question. Let me add my question to it. Ms. Toothaker, it looks like you've got 10 feet in front of the building, which would allow parallel parking. If you were to parallel park the building on the industrial use, because you're still in industrial use as
Correct. Yes.
a kitchen, how many square feet of the building could you utilize with the parking that you have on site? I'm asking you to kind of back into the parking.
That's a backward.
How many spaces would you get? Did I hear you say 2?
2.
2. And how many square feet of industrial use could you use with 2 parking spaces?
I don't think I don't think anything there would be viable, in my opinion.
But no, but how many square feet of the building?
I don't have the calculation in my mind.
You remember what the,
5,500, I'm seeing, I believe.
well, not for industrial, what's the parking requirement for industrial?
For warehouse use, it's 1 in 800.
So 1,600 with 2 spaces. Got it. So you could use 1,600 square feet of the total building, and the rest would just have to be shuttered,
Correct.
which I guess was where my question was.
Thank you. Thank you for doing my math. It's not my strong suit.
Mr. Ford, I didn't do any math. Anything
And
else?
The idea of using the existing, I don't want to use the word blight, but the lack of landscape, the lack of any type of aesthetic, addressing that at all. I mean, the idea of not adding any because all the neighbors don't, that doesn't seem like a very,
I'll let Ms. Toothaker answer that, and then Ms. Ellis, you afterwards.
So it's not that we couldn't add landscaping, it's that we can't meet the code at all. You either can do landscaping or you can do parking. And because it's every 4, you would have like I think, let me go back to it, but it's every,
But if you're underparked already, the difference between 10 spaces and 9 spaces and how that relates to the operability of the use, I just didn't see that addressed.
I think we felt that, that it was approved as in the 60s with 10 spaces, and we were asking to go back to what was approved. And because this is a heavy industrial area, I just drove it actually on my way here. I hear what you're saying. I know you're
Across the street from apartment complex.
that also has back out parking. Yes. Agreed. That wrote us a letter of support. But I understand what you're saying. Like, could we add landscape? Could we add, on the 2 ends, could we do landscaping islands? Sure, we could. Would it interfere with, right now, in fact, while I was there was a big, wasn't us, it was the use next to us is a furniture warehousing, and they had a huge truck that was pulled up in front of it. I can see where that would impact how our neighbors are using their property, because if you start sticking landscaping islands, then you can't pull in, and you can't use the loading zones and whatnot. I think industrial, the code is what the code is. We have to come here and we have to ask for a variance. But I think industrial areas, I think you have to look at them a little differently and see how does that work with the uses that are trying to use these kinds of areas.
And I think that's why we update the code, right? I mean,
Well, I think there's 2 different issues here. One is this variance before us, and 2 is does the code in these areas need some updating to handle this in a less case-by-case basis? But a question maybe for a different day or a different part of the meeting. Gina?
Member Ellis, if you can.
Yeah, can't hear you, Gina.
Microphone.
Are you on?
get out of here.
Mine was off too.
There you go.
All right, so my example,
You're getting a bill for this.
a discount. My example to you is if you drive through Fat Village, that is a warehouse district which has all backout parking, no landscaping, pedestrians, restaurants, and residential.
And it's dangerous.
You know what? It is the as is, whether we like it or not, it is the as is. On this particular street, because I spent a lot of time on the street because I had some concerns about the depth of the parking places, which it meets that, having measured it. But what I will tell you is it would stand out from the rest of the warehouses on the street, and the objective is to make the warehouse use effective as opposed to putting lipstick on the pig here.
I totally get it. And I mean, and I understand this part of a transition.
Yep.
Any other questions by the board? So let me open this to public comment. Any member of the public who wishes to speak? You guys just form a line before you want to speak. Anybody? Hearing no one? Bueller? Anyone? Ms. Toothaker, any closing?
I would just thank you for your consideration and appreciate your support. Thank you.
If there is no further discussion or questions by the board, I will eagerly await a motion.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to make one point. I had actually brought up ghost kitchens, if you remember, a couple sessions ago.
I
And
still want to know what the definition of a ghost kitchen is. You guys aren't cooking Casper, right?
go
Or-
to
no?
my favorite
Okay.
poke bowl restaurant. And again, I just want to, I understand that we're in this crowd now, we're coming back in, but the issues of COVID don't seem to be going away. They're affecting my business, they're affecting school districts and whatnot. And the primary reason these ghost kitchens are coming into existence is because COVID has caused a lot of sit-down restaurants to have to change their models. And so, as we can do our best as a board to accommodate the code in order to allow businesses to continue to function and allow for new opportunities, we should make that exception. And I understand absolutely Blaze's case on this, but again, this is more driven by COVID than it is by some business wanting to come in and do something new. So I think the board should take that.
Are you going to turn that into a motion?
Yes, I can.
Just wondering.
So I would I'd like to make a motion to pass the variances as listed for case number PLN BOA 21070004
Because they meet the
requirements for the variance under
Second.
our code.
I've got a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. McGinley,
No.
Mr. Elfman,
Yes.
Mr. Maxey,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis,
Yes.
Vice Chair McTeague,
Yes.
Chair Nelson,
Yes.
motion passes.
No, wait, we're still missing one voter.
Who's, oh, I'm sorry.
Michael Lambrex, yes.
Oh,
There we go.
I'm sorry. I didn't have him marked as present. Sorry about that.
You even had your right name thing in front of you.
Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Why don't we call the next case, which is case number Board of Adjustment 2107-0001. Jeffrey, I hope I got this right, Atanasio, represented by Marla Woodhouse. You guys here?
Yeah.
There we go. And you've been sworn in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me? First of all, you all have reviewed the package and the drawings.
God, I
and so-
certainly hope so.
Okay.
Excuse me, can you announce your name for the record, please?
My name,
Your name for the
Marla
record.
Woodhouse.
Thank you.
And Ms. Woodhouse, before you start that, let me run through disclosures, and I'll start with Mr. Elfman.
None.
Michael Lambrex, none.
Blaze McGinley, none.
Site visit, Gene Ellis.
None.
Patrick McTeague, none.
Chad Maxey, none.
I'm sorry, Ms. Woodhouse, go ahead.
Okay, so this, the variance that we're asking for this project is, it's a setback variance, for the AC equipment and the pool equipment. And, we have, the house is a 1920s Francis Abreu, home on Idlewild, of which there are just a handful.
I want to stop you for 1 second, because the only thing you're advertised for is 2 split unit AC units.
But no, it's in our
But
pack.
that's not what it's advertised for, unfortunately. The advertisement is for a variance to install 2 mini split condensing units. Mr. Spence, what do you want to do?
When we filled out the application, it was for in our narrative, it's for both of these.
Yeah, I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying I'm looking at the advertisement. And the
Okay.
advertisement doesn't cover everything you want. So we've got a couple of choices. Mr. Spence can tell me it doesn't really matter. We can move forward. I don't think that's going to be his answer, but he could tell me that. He could say you can move forward on the split unit and not hear the pool equipment, or he could say, gee, we should re-advertise and they should come back next month and hear the whole case. So why don't we wait, see what the board's attorney says? Because what I don't want you to do is go through a presentation only to find out that it's void because it wasn't properly advertised. Then make you come back and do the whole thing again. As
Okay.
much fun as it seems.
D. Wayne Spence, Assistant City Attorney. At this juncture, the applicant can only move forward with the request that has been properly noticed. So
Which is
it
the
would be
split.
at their option to decide whether or not they would like to defer that matter and bring, have it re-advertised and bring the complete request forward, or just hear the one request for the installation of the two mini split air.
So Ms. Woodhouse, do you want a translation from lawyer to?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing him too.
Okay, so it's the COVID masks. We all kind of have that problem. You have a choice. You can move forward with just hearing the variance on the split unit, and then you'll have to come back next month on the pool equipment, or you could just come back next month for both of them.
We'll do the what it's advertised for.
We'll do the split unit.
Mhm.
So can I ask you a question before you begin? How far out from the side of the house does the split unit extend?
The mini split unit is only a foot wide, and it's about a foot off the house. So it extends 2 feet off the house. The house is 5'2" or 3" from the property line, and so it's.
So you've got a small mini split that sits 3 feet off the edge of your house on its outward edge.
Yes.
Roughly the same size as a good-sized roof eave. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Should I continue?
please.
So the house is a 1920s house, so there's many aspects of the existing property that are non-conforming to the current code. It has a pool house that's actually built on the rear east and south property line, so it's a zero setback for that structure. And the current code would require, the only place where we could put the equipment to meet the current code would be in the center of the backyard. It would be in the garden space between the house and the pool house, because the way that the house was designed, there's garden walls that enclose the whole backyard, and that are part of the original building. And the pool house is a part of that garden wall. It's on the zero lot line, and the garden wall blends into the pool house. And then, so you have the pool house in the corner, the pool, and then the house. And so the garden space in between is the only place where we could put the AC units to meet current code. So this side yard on the south side is just 5 feet, and there's a 5-foot tall wall on the property line, part of the original structure, that completely hides the AC units from view, from any neighbors or the street or anything like that. So it's really the best location for these units to be. And the nature of the mini split AC compressor is much smaller and very, very quiet from the old type of AC unit. So it makes the most sense to be here in all aspects. That it's hidden from view, it's very quiet, and it's not in the middle of our garden space.
So your choice is basically between not air conditioning that space adequately or putting it in the side yard.
Yeah, we'd have to put it in the middle of the backyard. I mean, it would be terrible. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
Not if I don't want to talk about the pool equipment.
No, but I'm going to give you a suggestion for the pool equipment. When you come back next month, bring some pictures.
Okay, well, we submitted pictures.
Of the pool equipment? I didn't
Oh.
see those. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no pictures of the pool equipment. There's pictures of where the wall that hides the pool.
Got it.
because the pool equipment's not there yet.
Okay. Were you able to get
but I have cut sheets
any
for the-
letter of support or non-objection from your neighbor?
Did we have any letters from the neighbor? No.
And just your name and address for the
Yeah,
record.
Jeffrey Atanasio, 800 Poinciana Drive. I'm actually the owner. I'll be the homeowner, be our permanent residence. We have not gotten any objection. There's quite a bit of attention and curiosity with the neighbors, and they're excited as we are to have a house that's that old and built by Francis Abreu, and the fact that we're actually trying to keep it and save it in the neighborhood. And so everybody's been really supportive, but I don't have any letters. We know that we sent out all of the, the notices.
The notices.
300
Right.
foot radius, and I'm not sure if, we haven't heard any.
It's a shame that Mr. Abreu, notwithstanding the excellence of his architecture, didn't have the foresight in the 1920s to leave space for split units and things like that.
Yes, a future pool.
I know.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm not sure what we did, honestly, because I know we submitted as part of the package, and we did pick up, I picked up the signs personally, and I'm not sure where
Happens all the time.
went wrong, but yeah. So anyway, we appreciate your consideration on this one, and we'll certainly be back for the pool equipment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just wanted to mention that the AC unit before was in the front yard, the compressor. So, and that's not allowed by code either.
Right, beautiful. Okay.
So.
In that case, let me open it up for public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this matter? Again, a groundswell of people who want to speak, so let me close the public hearing. Any questions from the board?
I have one. I'd just like to say that I really appreciate you taking on the renovation of this house. I mean, I'm looking at the windows and it's going to be difficult. And then I look at the photographs of the houses that are around it, and I think it's going to be so nice to have this, to be there. So I think this is an understandable. With air conditioning.
With air conditioning, yes.
Very
Any other
expensive.
questions from the board?
Yeah, and if you, and it's a side comment, I don't think it needs to be tied into anything legally, but to try to find the lowest decibel system you can for your neighbor. Other than that, I think it's fine.
For the split unit?
Yeah.
Then they're pretty silent.
Yeah, exactly. They usually are, yeah.
They're pretty silent. So that sounds like you want to make a motion.
Oh, sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve item agenda number PLN BOA 210700001 as it meets the criteria for a variance.
Well, let's separate, because the only thing we can hear are the split units.
And
On
that's
the
the only thing
understanding
on,
that the pool equipment will be coming back next month. So if you
I'm
could-
making no reference to pool equipment at all because it's not in front of me.
Got it, but the variance is
Strictly
just for the split
strictly for
unit.
the split units
Got it, because it meets the variance requirement
under the current code.
Got it. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion amongst the board? If not, can we have a roll call?
Mr. Lambrix?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
So you got to go first this.
Yeah, because I know he's here now. Blaise McGinley?
Yes.
Howard Elfman?
Yes.
Chadwick Maxey?
Yes.
Eugenia Ellis?
Yes?
Vice Chair McTeague?
Yes.
Chair Nelson?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Have a good evening. We'll see you next month.
Thank you so much.
All right, as we're speeding through the agenda. Next case is Board of Adjustment Case 2107-0003, Carpello Jeroboam. And sir, if you could introduce yourself for the record, and then before you begin, we'll do disclosures.
Good evening. My name is Carpello Jeroboam. I'm representing JH Arc and Design and the owner, which I am as well. requesting your consideration on 2 variances. I wanted to ask, does this,
Let me, before you go, let's do some disclosures. Howard, you want to start?
Sure. Howard Elfman, none.
Michael Lambrecht's none.
Blaze McGinley site visit.
Jean Ellis, none.
Howard Nelson, none.
Patrick McTeague, none.
Chad Maxey, none.
Sorry to interrupt your flow, but the floor is all yours.
okay. So, there it is. Okay. I'm basically here to request a variance regarding the requirement to have a structural soil between the garage openings and the one canopy tree and the continuous shrub planting. This project was initially approved back in 2005, and the builder or owner began construction, and I guess because of the times and the economic difficulties, they did not complete the project. So I picked up the project in 2013, I believe it was. And under that time, I was given the plans for the project. It did not have the need to provide the island, the landscape islands in between the garages, because the code had not been amended to make that requirement at the time. The other issue with this site is that it is kind of constrained because there is a 10-foot utility easement and non-access from the county that prohibits entry from McNabb Road so that you could have direct drive-in parking. So then that way I could basically have the island. So the request is just to omit those 2 variances, which is ULDR section 4718, 33B12B and C. Now, I do want to mention that we are in permitting right now, and we have met all the landscaping requirements, and we've actually increased the amount of landscape. And also this building is set additional, I believe it's 14 feet from the required setback along McNabb Road. Okay. If you have any questions.
Any questions from the board? I've got a couple, but. Sir, if you can just point me to where, if you had to meet the code, you would have to place the structural soil and the landscaped areas.
Okay.
So we all know what we're talking
Right now it says planter.
about. Right?
There's one in between the 2 garages and this one in between the 2 garages. So typically you'd have a driveway. We would have a driveway directly out into the street. Or because of this 10-foot non-access easement, we couldn't push the drive aisle back because surface water has their requirements for stormwater runoff. So the drive aisle comes in and basically turns in here. Now, the adjacent properties, I don't know if you have the images. They do have a similar exterior, but they don't have garages. They park directly outside their units.
So are you proposing to replace the landscaped area and structural soil with the planters that you show on the plan?
Can you, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, are you proposing to replace the structural soil area for root development and the vegetative buffer area with the two planters that you
Yes.
show?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And there was discussion of a canopy tree.
Yeah, there's a
Point to that.
requirement to provide one canopy tree in that island between the garage
Oh, I see what
separation.
you're saying.
Yeah.
Because we got a letter that said something about a tree blowing over, but I think it's just a misunderstanding.
Right. Do you meet the landscape code outside of the one canopy tree for each island? Do you meet the landscape code for trees
Yes.
and shrubs?
It's actually approved already.
Any more questions from the board? If not, I'll open it up for public comment.
I just have one comment that again, we're coming up short with landscaping, like, again.
Mm-hmm. Mr. McTeague, did you have a?
No, I was just, are you planting or not planting a shade tree in there?
Not planning.
Planter?
Not, right?
It's
It's
just
not
going to
enough
be
room.
shrub.
Right.
Right.
Wouldn't be enough room if you didn't have the planter and just had an island there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. I mean, I suppose you could build the project, knock down the buildings, move them back, and then have enough room, but that wouldn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, the building is kind of constrained because of the setback requirements
Sure.
of the
Got
lot.
it.
I'm just making sure, yeah. Because the letter, again, alluded to
All right.
trees falling over and storm.
And we do have, Mr. Spence, do you want to read the two letters of objection into the record?
I actually haven't received them.
What? You haven't received them? Let's get them read into the record. What? We don't have to read them as long as they're in the record. But we should make sure that the board understands the objections. And the objection, just to summarize it, was they wanted them to meet every requirement, and they wanted to make sure that the structural soil was there so trees wouldn't blow over. We're going to get there in 1 second. Just making sure I read into the record the ones we've already received, then we'll get public comment.
So I have a letter here dated August 9th, 2021, to the Board of Adjustment of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 100 North Andrews Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Urban Design and Development, BOA, 700 Northwest 19th Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, via hand delivery from Gina. I apologize for butchering the name. The Nana, 6984 Northwest 30th Terrace, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33309. Case number PLN BOA 21070003. Objections to variance. I, Gina Dianana, hereby object to the variances being requested for the above referenced project and request that the variances be denied for the following reason. One, the admission of the installation of structural soil related to planting a canopy tree could pose a serious hazard to myself and my property should the canopy tree become unrooted during a windstorm. Two, the admission of the landscape pervious area, the canopy tree, and the continuous shrub planting would be detrimental to my property value due to the loss of aesthetic beauty and shade that this landscaping would provide, and which is consistent throughout the community. Three, there are issues regarding road access from parcel development that have not been properly noticed or addressed. I do not wish that my private road be utilized for any type of heavy machinery use or transportation and construction materials, loading or unloading due to noise, health hazards, inconvenience due to blocked access to my home and significant property damage that may result. Please be aware that I am disabled and not able to attend the August 11th, 2012 meeting, 2021
21.
meeting.
Thank you.
The
Second letter?
Second letter, August 8th, 2021, City of Fort Lauderdale, attention, Mr. Mohan. This letter is in reference of the case PL NBOA 21070003, and I want the builders to comply with all the guidelines to build the townhouses on the corner of I can't make out that. I believe it's Lyons and McNabb. Thank you for your attention on this issue. Olga Herrera, 6932 Northwest 31st Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 33309.
Great, thank you, Mr. Spence. Let's open this for public hearing. Any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? And ma'am, have you been sworn in?
I have.
Okay, and you can please state your name and address for the record.
I will.
Okay.
Let me untie myself from my mask.
Yeah, almost impossible to be heard through one of those.
So, my name is Donna Mergenhagen. I live at 303 4.5 Northwest 69th Court in Fort Lauderdale. I am the elected volunteer president of the Palmyra Village Association. I also have 2 additional letters that were mailed, both of which are requesting that I speak for them. These are addresses not in my 74-unit association. Can we have any additional consideration for time?
I don't know that we're in a rush for time at the moment, so.
But brevity is appreciated.
Yeah. Are we talking an extra hour?
We are not.
Okay, good.
All right, so.
And ma'am, to the extent you're going to read letters objecting that we haven't received yet, I'm going to ask you to leave a copy with staff.
Yes, I'm actually not going to read them. I'll just leave them with staff.
Okay. If you want to pass them up here, we can take a look.
Yeah, we would like to read it.
Okay. All right. So, I have lived at the address for less than 10 years. I'm probably one of the newer owners in the community. My particular association is 74 townhouses of 1 and 2 stories, and we are the property immediately to the south of the development lot. We sit on 3.5 acres, and we're pretty representative of the rest of Palmyra East and Palmyra West. Within that area, there are 3 recognized city neighborhoods. It's quite diverse. We have single-family homes, small associations, and fee simple patio homes. This general area was unincorporated Broward and actually fought over by the city of Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, and Cypress Creek. And the people who lived there during that time voted to join the city of Fort Lauderdale. You can see that all of the streets, this is a single family home area. The first one was a patio home. All of them have heavily canopied trees, quite a bit of lush landscaping. So even though we're diverse in some ways, the common element is that we have low density, low height, large footprints with extensive pervious surfaces, intensive canopy. It's why we love our neighborhood. Most of us enter from McNabb because 31st is incredibly busy, and we come off of McNabb and come off some of those streets that I just showed you. My particular development is one which has extended front yard planting, private fenced backyards, and structural planters. This is the back of the building, one of our 13 buildings, which abuts the property that is being developed. This is the type of landscaping that was put there in order to screen the people who live there from what has been a pretty poorly maintained empty lot for the last number of years. This is that empty lot. The industrial metal fence with the dead vines is fairly typical. One thing I wanted to mention, you may or may not be able to see in front of this car that always parks there, the notice sign. The building that I showed you just previous to this, that's 4 units, none of whom were noticed prior to noon yesterday. I don't know quite how that happened. And the notice sign, for those of us who don't travel 31st, is invisible. Not particularly relevant to what we're talking about, but a little bit of concern there. The empty lot has a lot of history for the people who've lived in the neighborhood a long time. The original owners, who owned directly east of what we're looking at, were generous and allowed the community to use that lot as community vegetable gardens. That's the beginning of the history. Last winter, a group of neighborhoods asked our commissioner to consider using the Parks bond to purchase the property, which then had a for sale sign on it. I don't recall what it was listed at on the sign, $100,000 or $110,000, but we requested our commissioner to consider purchase of that under Parks bond to make a pocket park. We don't meet the guidelines of Parks and Recs for a walkable park within 2 miles of our neighborhood. So that was a goal. Those 2 pieces of history and the type of neighborhood that you see, highly canopied, lush landscaping, are really what has created the strength of the opposition.
Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to actually pull this back to the variance, the 2 variances in
Okay,
question.
so the 2 variances are contiguous planting, which we have on our property. Oh, that's the other side of the lot, which has the invasive growth, and onto the sidewalk. This is another example of our property where we have a 1/4 mile of contiguous planting required by code. And we also have not only all the old growth trees and canopy that you see, but we're working with Mark Williams of the city to add canopy. So in essence, we feel that a variance granted on these 2 issues is not compatible with the neighborhood. It's not consistent with the 3 recognized neighborhoods that abut this to the south, to the east, and to the west. I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk about pictures or any more detail.
I've actually got a question for staff, and you may want to stay here for this. Mr. Ford, and we'll leave the structural soil alone, we'll leave the canopy tree alone for a second. The continuous shrub planting, as you look at this site plan, where would that continuous shrub planting have to be that they're requesting a variance for?
Within that island that separates the garage.
Within the two islands that separate the
two garages.
roughly 5 feet of space between the two garages.
4 feet in
The
between.
4 feet. And it would be continuous from the building frontage to the roadway, correct?
Just within the island itself.
Within the island, which is supposed to be from the building front to the roadway.
No, not necessarily. It may just be like 3/4 of that 18-foot driveway that's in the front.
Right.
And then if they were to put that in, it would encroach into that 24-foot drive aisle, as was approved for foundation only back prior to the
Got it.
NDCR enactment
Right.
in 2008.
Can you walk us back through that again to make sure we completely understand what the variance is giving up vis-a-vis shrubbery planting?
Certainly. So, we'll just give you a brief history of the NDCR for duplexes, townhomes, and cluster homes. It was written in order to reduce the prominence of garages along the front facades of those types of developments. So it was written so that garages would not be more than 50% of the width of the unit itself for each and every unit. And it would be set back, an additional 2 feet, so it wasn't as prominent as the main facade. One of the stipulations in that is that the garages have to be a minimum of 8 feet apart. There has to be an 8-foot space between each, reducing garages being stacked upon one another. Two of the conditions to be able to reduce it from 8 foot to 4 foot is that particular island. Put the island in, put a tree in, and the purpose of structural soil is to prevent the roots from damaging the paving.
Right.
So it's just to bound the roots within that area. And then it was supposed to be with shrubs and whatnot within that particular 2 islands. It doesn't reference any of the landscaping that's throughout the other part of the
So what they're asking for a variance for are a variance to not have to put in 2 islands, one in between each of the 2 4-foot paired garages, right?
That's correct.
Those islands would arguably be out to the drive aisle, which is 4 feet away.
Right.
And would need to be continuously shrubbed, and he's requesting to replace that with a planter.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think the planter is just how it was originally approved prior to the approving of the NDCR.
Got it.
So this code has been updated since the original application,
Since the original approval.
or the original approval?
Right. But for the permit lapsing, there wouldn't be a
And the property has changed ownership during that
which,
time.
which wouldn't change the approval of the site plan.
Just a point.
Right. Okay. Mr. Jeroboam, I'm going to, ma'am, any other additional comments?
I do have a question. I sent a letter from the Palmer Village Condominium 1 Association, and I didn't hear that.
I don't know that it was received, so I'm not sure where you sent it to.
I sent it to my commissioner and to Mr. Malik, Mohammed Malik.
You wouldn't by any chance have a copy of that letter, would you?
Not a very clean copy.
Well, unless it's got nasty comments about me, I don't know that we care about clean.
I can add them.
What? We can add some, okay.
It was sent last week after we took a survey of our 74 members.
Do we have that letter? And the commissioner didn't send the letter over?
No, we don't have that
Okay.
letter.
I'll be happy to find it on my computer and forward it. Can that count?
You can, but if we don't hear it now while we're making a decision, it's not part of it.
May I read it?
You can read it.
Okay. Members of the board, Palmer Village Condominium 1 Association is a community of 74 townhouses located to the east of Northwest 31st, to the south of McNabb, and to the north of 68th Street, and to the west of Northwest 31st Avenue. As president of the board of directors, I've been asked to present the concerns and position of the association. Yesterday, Thursday, some of the owners of the property adjacent to the address of the petitioner received a hearing notice. The property owners immediately adjacent to the property addresses noted on the hearing announcement did not receive a notice. There were recently placed notice signs on the property. One is on a private road hidden by a car. The other is behind a berm facing Northwest 31st. It is the opinion of the Palmer Village 1 Association that the hearing has not been properly noticed. Palmer Village 1 opposes the consideration of both variances. The lack of appropriately placed and planted landscaping will negatively impact the neighborhood and the quality of life for those homes which surround the property petitioning for the exceptions. Palmer Village spends approximately $150,000 a year on maintenance and replacement of trees and shrubs to provide pervious surfaces and shade. The association recently was required to spend $2,000 by the building department to screen a small fence within our property on a private drive with bushes. The association takes pride in the quality and appearance of the lush green space despite the cost. Neighboring associations maintain the same standards. Palmer Village 1 has also borne the cost of trimming the invasive trees and exotic shrubs on the property of the petitioner in order to minimize the damage to roofs and landscaping of Palmer property. In addition to the above concerns, members of the association question where the staging for the construction will be located. The public roads leading to the property are both currently under construction. Immediately to the east and south of the property are private roads and driveways with privately maintained lawns and trees. Although not the purview of this board, it is of great concern due to the association having experienced significant property damage caused during the staging and construction of a small development at the south boundary of Palmer Village 1, which is on a city street. Although neighborhood compatibility is a challenging scale to apply, please consider that any reduction of landscaping requirements will be completely incompatible with a neighborhood of old-growth canopy trees and lush hedging on the perimeters and in each private driveway. Thank you for your consideration and the time you volunteered to the city.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Spence,
Yes,
we've
sir.
got an allegation from the adjoining property owners association that they did not receive proper notice, that notice to adjoining property owners was not received until a few days ago, and that the posted sign was not visible. So do you want to opine on whether we've got a properly noticed
Sure.
hearing before we move forward?
Sure. In accordance with section 47-27-2A1, mail notice shall be deemed to be given when a notice has been properly addressed, stamped, and deposited in the U.S. Postal Service depository. And subsection G says failure to receive notice shall not be grounds to invalidate the hearing, as this provision is a directory and not mandatory. The staff at this time would ask staff if they've received an affidavit of mailing from the applicant to indicate whether or not they had mailed these.
And an affidavit of posting, correct?
Correct. So additionally, while we're waiting on that, just to stress again that the code provides that failure to receive the notice shall not be grounds for invalidating the hearing. And with regards to the sign notice, the code also provides an 47-27-2A3 subsection, subsection 7, that failure to provide notice while sign notice, agenda publication, and posting an additional and optional notice is required. Failure to provide these types of notice in accordance with these provisions shall not be grounds to invalidate the hearing.
Got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ford, do we have the affidavits?
So I do have in our packets I've
got the mailing list.
The mailing list and the circumference that shows. Typically, it's a one-page letter that the applicant submits that's notarized, that states that that accompanies this list, that states that they have in fact mailed to these addresses.
Right.
We could elicit that testimony from the applicant, assuming that the applicant would have been the same person that was the to attest to mailing, if that is the pleasure of the board.
Got it. And of course, you're familiar with the case law that says showing up at the hearing kind of voids your claim of failure for notice.
Yes, sir. It's a waiver of a claim that you did not receive.
Because otherwise, how'd you know to show up, right?
Right. All right, let me close the public hearing if there's no other speakers. Ms. Jeroboam, do you have any closing statements? If not, I'm going to.
Yeah, I just want to state that I'm not trying to oh, sorry.
No, it's okay, we just can't hear you.
Yeah, I know. I'm not trying to reduce the amount of shrubs or canopy trees. I'm actually providing more than what's required because I'm asking for this variance in the landscape.
Just not in those two particular.
Not in the two particular islands.
Got it.
And I can show you the emails I sent regarding the notices that I posted, and there's no berm along the property. So there's no way that it can be behind a berm. So if you want, I can load those. I can show you those notices.
I don't think Mr. Spence is saying he needs you to do that.
Okay.
So if you have no further closing, I'm going to turn it over to board discussion and potentially a motion.
I just have one comment. I mean, as an architect that works with developers, I'm constantly being pushed to make landscapes smaller, to make bathrooms smaller. It's the constant push with no consideration, little, if any, consideration of the neighborhood. And I would have liked to have seen some back and forth. I mean, I realize it's pretty contentious at this point, but I mean, we've got 14 feet along McNabb. We've got relatively deep backyards. Like, I think there was probably a solution out there that could have been reached.
Remember what we're talking about is the landscape area in the 4-foot island between the two garages.
Yeah, exactly. And so by not putting that, it runs directly contrary to the intent of that code, which is to block the garages from a major thoroughfare, which we're on a corner. And so, again,
it's to block the view corridor of a mass of garages.
Exactly. And so, I understand that there needs to be evolution relative to density and things like that. It's just a shame that I don't see any discussion about what we could do in that 14 feet to help mitigate the view, and things like that. Realizing it's not on your site.
4 feet.
No, I'm talking about 14.
He's talking about the 14, the right-of-way along.
Which isn't your property. I realize that would have been a bigger discussion with the city.
And the city does require me to plant canopy trees along that right-of-way, which we are planting 6 trees
No, that was the earlier question of you are meeting all the canopy-free requirements.
Gotcha.
And he's exceeding those.
Okay, I didn't see that. That's what I.
can
That was one of the
pull up
earlier
a
questions.
landscape plan that shows it, but yes, we are exceeding the requirements of the landscape around the property. It's just not.
Any other questions from the board for either the applicant or our neighborhood representative? In that case, I'll eagerly await a motion. Maybe not so eager.
We're on 3.
Would it be possible for me to make one more comment?
Ma'am, you had your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve case number PLN BOA 21070003 as it meets the requirements of the code,
Of a variance under the
of the
code.
variance under the current code.
I've got a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, roll
Sir,
call.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I just, I mean, we always talk about, self-created hardships. This is a new development. It's self-created. If it's being in the drawings, that's self-created, but that's just my point.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. We'll call the roll.
Miss Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Maxey?
No.
Mr. Elfman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
Yes?
Mr. Lambricks?
Yes.
Vice Chair McTeague?
Yes.
Chair Nelson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your
Pam, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Got one more. I promise we're getting to you guys. Because your attorney will start yelling at me if we don't.
Heat island effect.
Last case for the evening is Board of Adjustment Case 2107-0005, One Harborage Investments LC, represented by Hope Calhoun Esquire from Dunay Miskel and Backman. Ms. Calhoun, let's get through disclosures first, and then the floor will be yours. Howard?
Spoke with counsel. Michael Lambricks, none.
Blaise McGinley spoke with council.
Spoke with council site visit.
Spoke with counsel.
Spoke with council.
Chad Maxey, none.
Ms. Calhoun, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Hope Calhoun, on behalf of the applicant, office address of 14 Southeast 14th Street, Boca Raton, Florida. It's good to see all of you tonight. It's been a while. I'm feeling a little pressure because I'm the last item on the agenda, and so far I think things have gone well. So, fingers crossed here. The application before you tonight, before I said that, so the application we presented actually was for 2 variances. We sent correspondence, I think it was yesterday, withdrawing one of our 2 variances. So tonight we're only going to hear one. I also received correspondence from a neighbor who is supporting our application, the one that is remaining, and we're going to pass that out now. I didn't have a chance to submit it to you earlier. So this is Nicole, everyone. She's a new attorney in our office, and she's helping tonight. So with that, we'll move forward with the application request that is before you. So to be clear, as advertised, we had 2 variances that were to come before you. The first was a variance to reduce the minimum corner yard. The second was a variance to eliminate the requirement to increase the side yard. We are withdrawing our request for the second variance, which is to eliminate the requirement to increase the building side yard setback. So I'm only going to speak to you tonight about the first request, and that was the request for a variance to reduce the minimum corner yard at a setback from 25 feet to 10 feet. With that, what you see before you, and you have all of this information, or most of it already in your backup, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. We've highlighted in red the parcel that we're speaking about. You can see that it is directly adjacent to the entry street to the neighborhood, Harborage Isle Drive. The variance that we are seeking tonight specifically addresses that side of the property, the Harborage Isle, the Harborage Isle roadway. So again, just to repeat, the variance that we're seeking tonight is a request from section 47-5.30 to reduce the minimum corner yard setback from 25 feet to 10 feet. This is the existing condition. If you look on, I hope it's the right of your screen, this existing home is what's there now. Our proposal is to demolish that home and rebuild another home, in essence, in the same basic footprint. So again, this home that you see on your screen is existing. We're demolishing that and we're building a new home. So you can see the existing setback is consistent for the most part of what we're asking for. We're maybe off by a few inches, but this is the side that we're seeking the relief on. One thing to point out, again, our parcel is highlighted in red, and you can see generally the dimensions of all of the lots within the neighborhood. The parcel to the left is owned by one individual, so that you can see very clearly it's larger than the rest. But besides that, you'll see that my client's parcel is just smaller than, dimensionally than the others on the, within the island. So that is part of the reason that we're requesting the relief that we are requesting. This is the proposed site plan. At the top of your screen in gray, you can see the setback relief that we're seeking. Again, the top is Harbridge Isle. And you can see it grayed out where we're looking for the relief there, again, on the street side, not impacting the neighborhood side. These are just some general elevations to show you what the product will look like at the end. You can see the setback that we're looking for relief for on the left side where the trees are to be planted. Again, this is an artistic rendering, so it's not necessarily to scale, but just to give you an idea of the home that will be on the property. Another graphic. And this one shows you the proposed home in scale. Again, you can see the setback variance that we're seeking on the side yard is for 10 feet instead of 25 as required by code. You have this in your backup, but I just would like to very briefly go through the variance criteria and give an overview of how we meet those. So the first criteria is that special conditions and circumstances affect the property at issue, which prevent reasonable use of the property. In this case, as I showed you on a prior slide, this particular lot is a little more narrow than the others on the island. So that makes our circumstance just a little bit different than others. We could possibly not have the variance and go taller, but that would impact our neighbors, and so we chose not to do that, and so we've spread it out just a little bit, which necessitates the variance. The second condition is that circumstances which cause the special condition are peculiar to the property at issue. And generally, again, it's a little bit of a repeat of the first, in that our lot is a little bit different than others on the island. Again, I just want to remind everyone, you saw previously that the existing condition is consistent with what we're building. So we're basically rebuilding in the same footprint. And there's no one really within the island, no neighbors that are impacted on this side of the property. Third is the literal application of the provisions of the ULDR would deprive the applicant of substantial property right enjoyed by others in the same zoning district. So in this case, again, we're trying to, develop harmoniously with our neighbors. So we are impacting with the interior driveway as opposed to impacting our neighbors on the other side, on either side, really. Well, it's only one side, impacting our neighbors on the outside. So we don't go tall, we're going a little bit wider. And so we need relief for the setback there. Again, not setting any precedent, not creating anything new here, because we are, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but we're basically building within the footprint of the existing building. The unique hardship is not self-created. And so in this case, there's a little bit of give and take here, right? So I know I've said this already, but we could build a different building that would probably have a greater impact on our neighbors. We've chosen instead to be courteous and considerate of those around us, built a little bit bigger footprint, again, consistent with the building that's already there, so that we could accommodate the unique type of housing on the island and still not interfere with others. And then the last criteria is that the variance is the minimum variance that will make possible reasonable use of the property, and it will be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ULDR. And again, in this particular area, the homes in this area are unique. It is probably not uncommon that other homes built here have the same condition. They probably asked for variances when they were built. you can see that by example, again, the house is currently on the property, same condition, so they likely had to come and get a variance. So we're asking to do the same thing here. As I mentioned, we have a letter of support that you'll see was passed out to you. We also have a neighbor who was kind enough to attend tonight, and she can just wave and give her support unless you really want to hear from her. With me also is the owner and the architect, and between all of us, I think we can answer your questions, and we're happy to do so.
Ms. Calhoun, without making your neighbor come up and introduce herself for the record, which lot is hers in relation to this?
So we are at number 1. She is number 9. So she's across and down the street a little bit to the north. Kitty corner.
Kitty corner.
Here, let's try to do it.
I didn't
this
hear
way.
that from you, I heard that from her.
Kitty corner. So, oh, you can't see me pointing, sorry. She's across and she said kitty corner, so she can see it.
I'm old enough to be familiar with that term.
That's her, I know, yeah. Most of us are in this room. So again, with that, we would ask that you would vote favorably with our request. We're happy to answer any questions, and we thank you for your consideration.
So, Ms. Calhoun, I've got one question.
Yes, sir.
As I boil your remaining variance request down, what you're asking to do is rebuild within the same footprint as the existing house.
In essence, yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. Any questions from the board? If not, I'm going to open it up.
Chair, I just have a question. This is obviously new information to us as the board, and there are items here that they have said that there needs to be agreement on in order to get the agreement from the association. I just want to make sure that the dependent upon and subject to items 1, 2, A, B, and C, what are the status of those items?
I'm going to suggest we stay out of the private agreement. It's written by a very able attorney who I'm sure knows legal remedies if they do not follow through with the agreement.
I'd still be interested to know if the application has those, but okay. I'm assuming the attorney can answer that?
I can. I would just echo what the chair has said in that they're not really relevant for what's before you, but I will answer and tell you that we did meet with the members of the board Monday night, and that's when everything came up. My client agreed at that meeting pursuant to the letter that's before you to do as was asked and set out in the letter that's before you.
Okay, so your client has agreed to do it. That's all I wanted to hear.
Nodding
Thank
and
you very
yes.
much.
Any other questions from the board?
Just make a comment that it is within the footprint, but 2 stories, not 1.
Correct. All right, let me open it up for Ms. Calhoun. If you're done, I'm assuming you want to reserve.
If necessary, yes. Thank you.
Necessary. Any members of the public wishing to speak? Seeing or hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board, any discussion? Did I hear a motion? Of course, I can't hear a motion. I can see a motion. But is there a motion sitting out there?
Am I going to have to make them all?
You don't have to. Would you like to
the
take
first
the chair
one.
for a second? I'll make the motion. Make a motion. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to deny case number PLN BOA 210700005 on the grounds that it does not meet the requirements under the current code.
And let me,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, that's why I didn't want to make the motion.
No, got it. Mr. Spence, are we still operating under motions in the affirmative? Or can we move forward on a motion in the negative?
Because I'll withdraw my motion to make it easier.
Withdraw your motion?
To make it easier.
Okay, no, the motion's withdrawn. Ms. McTeague, do you want to either make a motion or take the gavel and I'll make a motion?
You'll just have to correct mine.
You'll do.
You should give us a little thing
great.
that makes it.
You'll do great. Remember, there is only 1 variance request before us right now, not 2.
So my motion would be to approve the single variance put forth by the applicant on Move my paperwork.
which is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum corner yard setback from 25 feet to 10 feet, a total setback reduction of 15 feet,
Correct.
because it meets the
Because it
requirements
meets
for variance
requirements
under our code.
Code.
You
Second.
did great.
I think we need
I've got a motion and a second. Any board discussion? In that case, ma'am, will you call the roll?
Mr. Maxey?
Yes.
Ms. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Elfman?
Yes.
Mr. McGinley?
No?
Mr. Lambrechts?
Yes.
Chair McTeague?
Yes.
Chair Nelson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a great evening.
Any communication to the city commission? I'll start. How are we doing on the fence code?
So Carlan Grant with the planning department here is here to give you an update.
Cool.
Good evening, Chair, members of the board. Carla-Ann Grant with the Department of Sustainable Development. And let me just put up my brief presentation. Oh, is it this? Oh, from the beginning.
No, you did that all by yourself.
Okay, I have a brief presentation. I don't really need to get into it,
Okay.
but I'll go over it anyways. So I know you all had a communication to the city commission to update to have an amendment to the fence code, taking into consideration FEMA flood elevations and site screening, and also to include a clearer option regarding the architectural features. That communication went to the board, to the commission November of last year, and the commission gave staff direction to move forward. We did come up with figuring out what the issue is. The issue is more so how the height of the fence is measured, which is how the grade definition is defined. And so the current requirement states that the maximum height for accessory structures is measured from the finished ground surface of the neighboring property if a retaining wall elevates the non-habitable structure. And so because of this, it created a need for variance requests for applicants who have concerns about privacy and safety. And so staff recommends that the height should be measured from the base FEMA flood elevation of the development site and not the neighboring finished ground surface. We presented this recommendation to the commission in April of this year, and it was supported. And so we are moving forward with the amendment. The amendment is simply to just redefine the definition for grade, and what we're doing is striking out number 2 for the grade section that mentions about measuring for the non-habitable accessory structure and measuring from the neighboring property, in a nutshell. And so the next steps would be moving forward to planning and zoning. We are bringing this amendment forward to planning and zoning next week. And then we're hoping to have it approved by City Commission by April of this year.
Great. Perfect. Can I ask staff to do one thing with respect to this code amendment? There have been more than several variance requests on fence height issues that have come before this board in the last 2 years, some of which, based upon this issue, some of which have not been approved. If you can have somebody look back at those variance requests and let those applicants know that there is a code change that would not necessitate a variance, they could just get a permit. I think there's some people there who wanted a higher fence to protect their property, didn't get a variance from this board. They will now just be able to get a permit under this code reading.
We'll definitely do that.
We probably owe them that.
Okay, no problem.
Perfect.
All right, anything else?
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. For
You're
that.
welcome.
Anything for the good of the city? No? Did I hear a motion to adjourn? No, that was a belch. Did I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.